you all for inviting me, and I just want all of you to remember all of the brothers and sisters who put forth the effort to get the center for all of us, that we can have such a thing, that we can remember the Ahlul Bayt. And there's a lot of effort and things like that that go into these types of projects. And so, inshallah, please recite a loud salawat for all of them and all of their relatives. Please give us salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So tonight we were here for the happy occasion of the birthday of, for the birth of Imam Al-Askari. Before we get started on that, we also wanted to mention a few words about the political situation which is going on for our Muslim brothers and sisters in Palestine. When we're looking at the news, one of the things that we see with the Zalimeen from the time in the past time and in the present time is this desire to spread confusion about what's right and what's wrong, who's right and who's wrong. Because when there is this confusion, then it allows zulm and oppression to prosper. And one of the things that they do is kind of, we would say, using buzzwords, and the zalim would like to set the frame for what's going on. Rather than we ourselves observe the situation and then we say, you know what, I'm watching this and I think this one did something right and I think this one did something wrong, and we kind of come to our own conclusion. They like to set the frame. That this is where it starts, this is where it stops, and this is how you should begin, and this is how you should finish. One of the things that we saw, and we aren't going to get into the bahs of the exact shari'i ways to doing jihad and all of this type of stuff, because it's a long bahs which we aren't going to get into. We don't have the time, and this is not really the format. But we're talking about the framing. They always start the framing this way. First of all, do you condemn the Palestinians? They start this way. Shouldn't first we condemn the ihtilal and the occupation and the hisar and the siege? And shouldn't we condemn all of these things first? And their response to the peaceful protests, the people who are just throwing rocks or maybe setting fires, this type of thing, they killed the people. Shouldn't we condemn, if you were going to just any human being, as a insan, sahib al-aql, human being with reason, you would say first you would start by pointing out who's right and who's wrong. Then you would start next by going to the details of maybe you went a little too far, or maybe you didn't go far enough, and all of that, the sort of the finer points of what you did right and what you did wrong. But the first one would be, you condemn the zalim, not you condemn the madloom and his reaction. Even according to either way, which is, if you look at it from an Islamic perspective, we say the entire land is maghsub. The entire thing is stolen. Not just the 67 borders or something like that, or the 48 borders. They change the borders all the time. But not just the part that they're saying. We say the whole thing is stolen. They're like, well, half of it's stolen and the other half's not. But we all agree that they're thieves. That would be the starting point. Not that first do you think that the person who's trying to get his right back went too far. First you would want to identify what's going on. You would say, like let's say that I came to your house and I stole $500. And then the police catch me and I say, well, actually, 200 of the dollars was mine and the other 300 I stole. we all agree that you stole. You don't get to say, well, because 200 of it was mine, then that means I get to steal the other part, and now you have to negotiate to get your $200 back, or whichever part you said was stolen. No, we agree the person is a thief, and then that's where the argument starts. So they like to do this part, which is the flipping the zalim and the madloom, and first you say that the madloom is wrong, and he should be condemned. Then you say that the zalim has the right to now punish the mazloom. Whatever he does, he has the right to self-defense. The zalim, not the mazloom. So the thief in the scenario, and remember, this isn't my position. This isn't something I'm making up. Because if you're Islamically, and what my position is, the whole thing, according to the official statements of where I'm from, the country where I'm from, the U.S., and the official statements of Canada, this is to 1967. They say to 1967 they have haqq, the rest is stolen. In any scenario, we all agree what's going on. This is which side's stealing and which side's not. We all agree that when people tried to protest peacefully, they were attacked. So we're like, when you get that the basis of the argument is the same, now you would disagree with the finer details. But they like to make this be lost. And then they have even the Muslims themselves start to take up the language, and first we condemn the other Muslims, and first we condemn the Mazloom, then we try to go and make a case. Whereas you have to have that, at least in your own mind, have that be straightened out. Who is zalim? What was their zulm? What's the argument to the extent of the zulm? And then you can go to whether or not the madloom went too far. But the zalim never has the right, like you never have the right to do self-defense in zulm. Meaning, I don't get to steal your car, and then when you try to take it back, I was just defending myself. I had to beat him up. He tried to take his car back. No, you don't have the right to self-defense when you're doing tyranny and oppression and these types of things. So this is something that is not just in the past, but you can see that the oppressors want to continue this idea of making the rights get lost, making the people confused, so that they can continue to do their oppression. In our bahs, we wanted to talk. Please give a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We wanted to talk about something which is very important, which is the necessity of love for the Prophet and his Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. This is something which is another thing which is sometimes our brothers of some of the other madhahib, it's in their books, and previous generations used to emphasize it. But now the newer generations are acting as if it's something new and something from outside of Islam. This is a hadith which is in Bukhari and Muslim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And they have the sanad and all that, but we won't go into it. Qala Rasulullah, La yu'minu ahadukum hatta akunu ahabba ilayhi min walidihi. Sorry, I left out a word. It's min wuldihi wa walidihi wa nasi ajma'in. So I've transcribed it wrong. But from his children and his parents and all of mankind, that I have to be more beloved than them altogether, or you're not mu'min. Unless you love the Prophet more than the entirety of mankind. And remember, if the Prophet is telling us something, it's not that, like, you know how when you have these tyrannical leaders in the past, they're always demanding this from people because of their own lack of personality, arrogance, and all this type of thing. But if the Prophet ﷺ is asking us, please give us salawat. Allahumma. He is asking us because this is an order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet is not going to say even one word which is from himself, oh, I'm enjoying this, I'm getting personal fun, so I'm asking you to love me more than this, that, and the other. He's doing this as a directive from Allah. And this encompasses not just him, but his Ahl al-Bayt. We have a hadith from this is actually, I've heard it in the Sunni books. I'm not sure if it's in the Sahihain, as they call them, but I've heard it in Sunni hadith. قال رسول الله أدبوا أولادكم على ثلاثة حب نبيكم وحب أهل بيته وقراءة القرآن. That train your children on three things: love of your prophet, love of his family, and on qira'at al-Quran. You say, well, why would the prophet say this? Some people say, well, naturally people, if you love the prophet, if you love someone, then you love their near and dear ones. This is something natural. Why would the prophet say, not just let it occur naturally, that you have to teach your children? And it's adabu, meaning teach them this adab, teach them this akhlaq, teach them this. This should be part of their character, that they love the Prophet, peace be upon him, and they love his Ahl al-Bayt, and they learn the Quran. What's also interesting is that love is something which you cannot really force. Meaning, I can make someone do other things, but I can't force them to love it. So I can get you and I can force you to sweep. I can get you and I can force you to do this, that, or the other. But can I force you to enjoy it and love it? No. So the Prophet is saying to do this. And then we say this is one of the most important things, one of the most important steps, that you don't have iman unless you love the Prophet and his Ahl al-Bayt. And we say, why is this? Can't somebody just say, well, I have iman on ilm and aql. I have knowledge and I have reason that Allah exists. And I read the Quran, so I know what Allah has asked me to do. And I'm just doing it without all of this love and things like that. Just with reason and moving forward. Is this possible? According to the hadith, you don't have iman. Even if you're doing it with reason. You don't have iman, you don't have anything in your heart. They say that this is Islam, meaning you did this basically by force. When these people, they said they didn't do what the Prophet, they say we believed, and the Quran says, no, you didn't believe. You surrendered. A couple of things about this. One of the things is that to get this real taharrak, this real movement in a human being, one of the things that's needed is it to come from his heart. Actually, one of the secrets of ibadat in and of itself is really that it's coming from the heart. Meaning, why do we pray? Why do we fast? Why is Allah asking us to do this? Allah is wanting us to get the benefit. Allah is wanting us to try to be nearer to Him. The thing that sometimes people forget is that this is really, when you have real fear, it's not the same as fear from something outside to the inside, meaning like fear of harm is not really real, it's not the real deep fear. Fear of love lessening is the real fear. We use an example. Sometimes somebody says there that I'm afraid of my grandmother. I'm afraid of my grandmother. Your grandmother can't really do anything to you. If you're a grown man, your grandmother's 90 years old, what can she really do to you? She doesn't have money. She doesn't have power. She can't beat you up. Even if she wants to say something mean, you can leave. You say, I'm afraid of my grandmother. Why are you afraid of your grandmother? You're afraid of doing something which makes your grandmother love you less. Because your grandmother, sometimes even more than your parents, it's very much pure. She just loves you. She's not doing, because the parents, they're still in the job of doing discipline and straightening you out and fixing you and this, that, or the other. Your grandmother just loves you. Directly love. And so the last thing you want to do is do something that, and remember, if you do something bad, usually the kids, sometimes they do something bad, the parents want to punish them, they run and they hide with their grandmother because they know the grandmother will protect, right? So you don't want to do something that makes a person who loves you without any condition, loves you without any compulsion, loves you without asking you something back. You don't want that person to now lose their love for you, or even just it get less. So when we have this pure love from Allah, that Allah loved us so much that He created us and created the world for us and created all these things for us, we don't want that somehow that love that we have for Allah gets less. That the love that Allah has for us, gets less, that it goes down. So the Prophet subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet, peace be upon him, is asking us to love him as a means of getting closer to Allah. Because the Prophet and his family are perfect representations of what Allah wants from us. And if we're not able to love the Prophet and his family, then that shows that there's something wrong. Why am I not able to love someone who's getting the answer right? It shows there's something in our hearts. Why are you jealous? Why are you angry? Why are you arrogant? There's something wrong in your heart that's preventing you from loving the perfect example which is presented before you. Please give us salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, when the Prophet is telling us to do these three things, teach our children these three things, hubb nabiyakum wa hubb ahl baytihi wa qira'at al-Quran. Right? Teach your children these three things. One of the things which is very important is don't, don't contract out this job. Don't say that, I'll trust somebody else to teach my children. You say, well, there's this other guy who can read Quran better, or there's this other person who knows more. Yes, you can do that, but you should be the one to do it. It should be a priority to you. Not that I'm going to subcontract this out and give it to someone else. Do it with your own hand. Then you'll know to a certain extent how far they've gotten. Maybe once you've done to the max, then you can say, well, to get you to this next level. But first do them to the max of your ability. Lish, why? What is very important is that when you're teaching, when we learn this in the Hausa, is that it's very important for you to have a mubahasa partner. After the teacher comes and they teach us, then we get one of the other students, and then I teach him back the same lesson, and then he teaches me back the same lesson. You say, you didn't learn it unless you did that. Not the Western way, that you just go there and you take a test, however you got 100, you got 100. No, we said that you have to teach somebody else, and then they have to teach it back to you. This example of teaching forces you to learn, forces you to understand. Because the other person, when you're explaining it to them, they sometimes ask a question. So it forces you to learn some of the Quran. It forces you to learn about the Prophet. It forces you to have love for the Prophet. We kind of forget about ourselves. Yes, we're supposed to teach and raise our kids, but also teach and raise your kids. And the best way is by setting a good example. And also the children see that the love and that you did this with your own hands, it's going to be much deeper than if you handed them off to somebody else. Meaning the minimal effort that you did, maybe my qiraat isn't that good, I still make some mistakes. It's funny, sometimes when I read Quran, I make the mistake that my mother did when she couldn't read Arabic at the time. So she used to get when they write it in the English letters? So she taught me when I was like 5 years old. And I'll continue, I know it's not good, but I mean, this is like kind of a wiratha, like, the Bilal, when he used to say, instead of saying sheen, he would say seen. So he didn't have it in his language. But meaning that this continues with your whole life. That how did you learn? Some of it is that I learned this from my own father. I learned this from my own mother. He stopped what he was doing. He took time out of his day. He woke up a little bit early to go, instead of going to work or getting a little bit extra sleep, and he taught me this surah himself. It's different. As we say, it sticks to you more. It shows you that this is the priority. It shows the children this is the priority in your life, more than all of the other things. So sometimes people forget about it. They get into the whole Asian mama mindset, and they make sure that the kid has, is getting straight A's, and he's doing this and he's doing that. If he somehow gets his Quran, we can get to that on the weekend. No, this has to be the priority. First he gets the Quran. First he gets love of the Ahlul Bayt. If we get to the A's in math and physics, we get to it. We have to have that. Why? Would we choose dunya over akhirah? We don't know if he's even going to be good at physics or want to do physics. We don't know if he's going to live till tomorrow. But we do know at some point he's going to have to answer to his Lord. This one's certain. Why would we go for the uncertain thing? We kind of are like that, unfortunately, all of us. We'll get to we'll get to deen when we get to it. But first we have to settle the dunya. No, settle the deen first and get to the dunya when you get to it. Please give us salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There's a few things. One of this is, with this love of the Ahlul Bayt, one of the things that's very important is to learn very much the history of the Ahlul Bayt. When you understand the circumstances they were in, and you're able to give the stories of the Ahlul Bayt, what they were doing, how they were doing it, this is very important for giving the proper context to understanding, rather than just saying, oh, he was mu'min. It's very important to know those history of the Ahlul Bayt. This allows us to understand the situation of the times now, because the examples repeat themselves. The tyrants repeat themselves. So when we look at the history of this Imam Hassan al-Askari, alayhi salam. Please give us salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The political times in this time were very confusing for the mu'mineen. The Shia, it had become clear what they were. So the Bani Abbas, they knew. The Bani Abbas themselves had started out as Shia and then flipped into being Sunni to preserve their power. And this is something which I used to have a friend I used to argue with, a Sunni brother. And I told him this, and he was surprised. They always say this, they think Sunni, you assume they mean it comes from Sunnah of the Prophet. It doesn't come from Sunnah to Nabi. That's not the sentence. You know how we say Shia, the longer version is Shia to Ali? Their longer version isn't Sunnah to Nabi or something like that. It's Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'ah. That's the longer version. The Sunnah meaning you're following what the people are doing, what the awam. And Jama'ah, you're just with the group. This is what the terminology is meaning. Meaning you're following the Sunnah, however people are praying, you pray. However people are, meaning not the Shia who are following their own Imam, and not the Jama'ah, meaning not the Khawarij. That's what they're talking about. This is what this phrase means. This isn't to argue with their aqidah, whether it's right or wrong, but where did the word originate from? It's Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'ah, and it's the originators of it are actually Shias who flipped in order to preserve their power. Because the Bani Abbas and the children of Ali at one point were together, and then they betrayed them and took the power for themselves. So at the end of the time of the Bani Abbas, in order to not help and take care of the people, they began switching more and more to brute force. So originally their armies were Arabs and Persians, because that was the people. Most of the population was Arabs or Persians. That was the bulk of the population. There was some Egyptians and other types of people, but the bulk of the population was that. Some version of Arab, or the people in Iraq and Lebanon and Syria, things like this, and then the Persian Empire. They didn't want to respond to their own people. So what they did was they brought in soldiers from outside, the Turks. So they were the ones who brought the Turks, who later on became the Ottomanis and other types of things. They brought these people from outside in, and they just would listen to them. So they said, now we don't have to respond to what the people want at all. So they could just keep all the money, all the power, all the everything for themselves, and not have to be responsible towards their people, and just rule by brute force. Unfortunately, this flipped on them, and the Turks turned against them. And so then they would kick them out or put them in, because they lost all of their legitimacy after a while. In this time, different Abbasis were flipping very quickly, and there was other revolutions against them. So the Shias were in a very confused position. How Hassan Askari used to communicate, and they had him in prison. Because what did he represent to the people? He represented this ideal of the Prophet, of how a perfect person should be and what the government could be. That was the threat. That there was the ideal of, we don't have to live this way. We don't have to live under oppression. We don't have to, be confused on issues. And just to give you an example of proof that they knew that he was the actual representative of the Prophet, they said that one time, there was a drought. Some of you may have heard this story before, but we'll repeat it for those who do not, and to get this context. And the Bani Abbas, whatever is Mu'tamid or Mu'taz, they were switching so many, asked the people, come out and pray that Allah sends us rain. So the people, they came out and they prayed, and nothing happened. They prayed and nothing happened. And then a Christian monk came out, and then he prayed, and it started raining. And the people started having doubt about Islam, because they said, well, this Christian, he prayed, and we prayed, and nothing happened. The Christian, he prayed, and the rain started falling. So then they ran, they got the Imam from prison, and they said, you have to do something to save your grandfather's religion. And so then he came and he got the monk and he told him, open your hand. And he found a bone in it. He said, put the bone down and now you pray. So the monk put the bone down and then he prayed and nothing happened. He said the reason that the dua was getting answered was because you were holding on to a bone which was one of the previous prophets. And for his barakat, Allah was answering your prayer. And then the imam prayed, and then it started raining, and it kept raining, and the drought was ended. But the example is showing that these zalimeen, from that time and now, they knew what the truth was. They knew he was the imam. It's funny, you know, on this subject of Imam Askari. When the Zalimeen took over Iraq, they started searching his tomb for signs of where Imam Mahdi is, Ajalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. Meaning they believed it. They believe it more than we believe it. The idea of this is from, I remember it was in the 60s. They were like, our major threat is a messianic figure who can organize the Muslim people. This is from the 60s. Meaning that when we're talking about love of the Ahlul Bayt and being ready, and that when somebody who is fulfilling that role comes, that you have actual love to defend him and to stand up for him and to push for him and to fight for him and to emulate him. That we have to have that in us already so that we won't be like these people in the past. How many of these other times the imams would be there? The imams or the prophet of the children of Israel, or they would come, and because the people would make the short-term decision to do something which is beneficial to themselves but hurts the imam that they had at that time. And again and again and again, the cycle would repeat itself until these people, and they would be stuck in it, in humiliation and poverty, because they didn't have the self-control to stop themselves from doing something wrong. So this is another thing that we have. Sometimes we want to judge. Do I have love for the Prophet and the Imam or not? Sometimes we think that we do, but we're not sure. Imam Baqir alayhi salam gives us the answer. He says, Man kana lillahi muti'an fahuwa lana waliyun. Whoever is obeying Allah, then he is one of our lovers. وَمَنْ كَانَ لِلَّهِ عَصِيًّا فَهُوَ لَنَا عَدُوٌّ. Whoever is disobeying Allah, then he is one of our enemies. So, do we have any questions? We have to really look at ourselves and try to be on the same path, on the same khat. We have to be in our actions, and things have to be reflecting the Imam. We have to be, as they say, like, be a zain for them. Be as that when people see the Shia, they say, oh, I wonder how their Imam is. Really, we can't behave in such a way that a person says, when he sees the Shia, like, you know what, their Imam must be terrible. Because look at these people. We have a lot of responsibility that people need to see the Imam reflected in us. That this is, if these people are like this, imagine what a perfect version of them is. How mu'min they are, how honest they are, how trustworthy they are, how good their manners are, how kindly they treat their wives, how kindly they treat their children, how ba wafa they are when they come through with their oath. Then you can say that yes, this will be a good reflection on the ai we have heard this a lot when we're talking about this ayat. This is talking about Amir al-Mu'mineen. Innama waliyakum Allah wa Rasul walladina yaqimuna as-salat wa yutuna az-zakat wa hum raqi'un. Please give us salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. That Amir al-Mu'mineen was praying, and he gave the ring, and this ayat was revealed about him. But the next ayat, which comes after it, is very important. وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فَإِنَّ حِزْبَ اللَّهِ هُمُ الْغَالِبُونَ. When you have this wilayat, when you have this muhabbat, when you have this connection with the Ahl al-Bayt, you will be victorious. Some of the brothers and sisters, I think, are getting a little bit tired. Please give 3 loud salawats and wake ourselves up. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So, this wilayat does a few things. Yes, we'll be victorious, but it's not magic. It does a few things that helps us get to that needed victory. One of the first things is that it gives unity to the community. That, you know the sentence, wale man walahu? Be friends with whoever is friends with him. It allows people of completely different backgrounds, completely different languages, completely different everything to have something in common. So a mu'min brother or a mu'min sister, maybe one is from India, another one is from Africa, another one's from America, another one's from Iraq, another one's from Sweden, another one's from wherever. But what pulls them together is that they have love of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim wassalam. They have that love of the perfect example for humanity. So this pulls us together and gives us a type of unity that other people don't have. We mentioned that it was a positive example. It always gives us something to strive for. No matter how good I am, Amir al-Mu'mineen is better. I can never get arrogant because I say, no, I'm supposed to be like Amir al-Mu'mineen. My salat, I can pray and pray and pray and pray. My salat is never going to be the salat of Zayn al-Abidin. Please give us salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. That they say it's supposed to be the mi'raj of a mu'min. So unless I'm to that level that it's a mi'raj, then I have work to do. It gives us leadership and guidance. Why? Because we say that this is not something that can be stolen or taken by force. We have to take the person who is the best of the best of the best, and that person is our leader, and that person is our guide. And if there's anybody second, they're only a temporary placeholder for the highest of the high and the most perfect example. It allows us to get over envy and jealousy and arrogance, because these are the things that can destroy a community. Sometimes there's a community. What happened? There's all the brothers and sisters are there. Then, oh wait, you know what? I don't like Dr. Hassan. He thinks that he should be in charge. It should really be me. If you're working for something that you love, you're not like that. We see this example in the Imams alayhim assalam. This is important about this word wilayat, that there's a wali, meaning there's love from both sides. In the Arabs' tribal system in the past, we kind of forget how important this wilayat was. In the tribal system in the past, if you didn't have a wali, you were doomed. They used to have wilayat from these big tribal chiefs, right? So if you were just walking around in the desert and there was no government, right? And so somebody wanted to come and rob you. If you say, no, I'm the mawali of such and such chief. They say, oh, well, we can't bother him because if we bother him, then his whole tribe is going to come after us. So having the wilayat of a powerful chief was very important to these people. And the Prophet is saying that if you have my wilayat, you have Allah's wilayat, meaning you have the protection of the Creator and the help and the provision of the Creator of the universe. Please give us salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And it's a relationship of love, right? We see this with Ahlul Bayt, that the Ahlul Bayt actually cared about what was best for the ummah, right? They didn't just want positions and power and this, that, and the other. So they wouldn't do something that would hurt the ummah, even if it would get them a position of power, because of their love for the ummah, right? So sometimes they had to step down from their positions like Imam Hassan, or let other people go before them like Amir al-Mu'mineen, because if they had a fight and an argument at that time, it would harm everybody. If we have that in our example, that we say that the mission of the Ahlul Bayt is more important than whatever my personal needs and feelings are, that allows us, even in small centers and things, to be able to keep some degree of unity, because we're looking at the bigger picture. We're striving for what's better, what's for everyone. So this is something that's very important, and through these means and these methods, we will be able to get towards victory. Allahumma jal hayatana hayata Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, wa mamatana mamata Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. واتنا في الدنيا زيارة محمد وآل محمد وفي الآخرة شفاعة محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد